Hi, here are just a few questions that were emailed to me. Questions that's, for example, this is in 3-1, number 17, 21, and 23, and it said solve each system by graphing by hand and then check your answers using your graphing calculator. In whether you're using your graphing calculator or you're graphing by hand, you have to make sure that you solve for y first. Okay, so let's take a minute to look at problem number 17. In problem number 17, I'm first going to have to get y by itself. So if I have 5x plus y equals 11, all I have to do is subtract 5 from both sides, and I get y equals negative 5x plus 11. In the second equation of number 17, I am going to do the same thing. Subtract x from both sides, so I get negative x plus 1, and then I have to get a positive y, so I divide by a negative 1, which gets me a positive x, which gets me a negative 1. So if I'm graphing by hand, then I just plot those points on my graph and find out where did the two systems, or two equations, intersect. If I'm doing this on my calculator for number 17, all I have to do is type in, hit y equals, and then do negative 5. Oops, make sure it's a negative sign. So negative 5x plus 11. In the second equation, type in your x minus 1. And then you're going to hit graph. Now, if you see the picture that I see where it's hard to view, you may want to change your window. Go from possibly a negative 10 to a positive 10. And then same thing for y's, negative 10 to positive 10. If you hit graph now, this is considered your standard window. Same thing would be looking if you did it by hand and you're looking for the intersection point. So you do second, you would do trace, and we're looking for the intersection point because that would tell us what our solution is if there is one. And then you push first curve, yes, this is my first equation, so I push enter. Second equation, yes. And if you want to guess, you just use your arrow buttons until you get to that point. Say yes, and you find out that the solution to number 17 is 2, 1. It's the point 2, 1. You'll do the same thing for number 21. Solve for y, it's already there. So all you have to do for that one is type in negative 3x for your first equation, delete, delete, delete. For your second equation, right here, x plus y equals 2. You just subtract your x, so y equals negative x plus 2. And you type that in down here, right here. So you have negative x plus 2, hit graph, and once again you're looking for the intersection point, so you do second, trace, intersect, and then it says first curve, that's my first line, this is my second line, notice the cursor jumped, and then it says guess again, so I'm just going to arrow over to where I think it is, push enter, and my answer to number 21 is negative 1, 3. You would do the same thing if you're graphing by hand. Same thing if you're graphing by hand in 23, it's already in fraction form. And then here you have to solve for y. So that's how you do some of the questions from 3-1. The next question that I had was from section 3.3 homework, ones that you did last Friday. And number 7 was one of the questions. And so the question said solve the system of inequalities, and you have to do this by graphing. So just like in the previous examples, if you're given this as your first equation, number 7, you have to solve for y. So I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. So I have 2x minus 3 is greater than or equal to y. Typically we have the y on the left, so if I rewrite this y, I still have to have the inequality pointing at the y. So then I would have my 2x minus 3. Since we're supposed to graph this, I know this graph would start at negative 3, and it's going to go up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, and this line is going to be connected by a solid line. Again, you have graph paper, so your graph looks a little bit better. The second equation in number 7 is x is less than 3 minus 2y. Want to solve for y. So here I might subtract 3 first. So I have x minus 3 is less than negative 2y. Divide by negative 2 to every number. And what happens is we're dividing by a negative number, so that sign, is going to flip. So this would be negative 1/2 x, a positive 3/2. The sign has to flip y. And just like we said in our first equation, typically you put the y in the left, so y is less than, still find the same pointing, less than negative 1/2 x plus 3/2. Now this one's a little bit trickier because it's fractions, but remembering that 3/2 is really 1.5. So this one starts at 1.5, so if this is 2, it starts here. It's going to go down 1, so it has to go down a whole step, which would be here, over 2, 1, 2. And so it actually crosses right there. And this is also going to be a solid line. And then the last thing you have to do is you have to look at shading. In the case of the first one, it said it has to be less than. So this would be considered less than my first line. This one also is less than, so this is considered less than my second line. And we see that the two places that they overlap, where they less than, are right here. So my solution would look like this region shaded in. So that's how you do problem number 7 on 3-3. The next question that I was asked was problem number 19. Problem number 19, same thing. You're just going to graph your inequality and find out where the regions overlap. So you're going to solve for y by subtracting x. Then you're going to graph that. A positive 2 is where I start, down 1, over 1, and this is a dashed line. Oops. Again, graph paper makes you graph a little bit better. The second equation in 19 is 2x minus y is less than 1. So my first step would be subtract 2x. Then I have to get this positive, so I'm dividing by a negative 1. Remember, when you divide by a negative, the sign again flips, so it becomes greater than 2x minus 1. So minus 1 is here. You go up to 1, 2 over 1. This is also a dashed line. And since this one says greater than, I would be greater than my first line. This one also says greater than, so it's greater than my second line, and I see that those two regions overlap right here. So my solution would be just this, and I would not have any of these things. I would erase those to make sure that they're not part of my solution. I hope that helped review some of the graphing problems.